Morning. Today we're going to cover Genesis 10 and 1 Chronicles 1 verses 5 through 23. And the reason for that is because Genesis 10 is basically mostly the same as 1 Chronicles 1 verses 5 through 23. 1 Chronicles is just listing the genealogy, and Genesis 10 is mostly genealogy. These are the generation of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. And then 10 verse 2, this is where 1 Chronicles 1 verse 5 starts. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. Both verses are the same. And 1 Chronicles 1 verse 5 and 10 verse 2. Going to 10 verse 3, the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Those are the same. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Now in this verse, 10 verse 4 and 1 Chronicles 1 verse 7, the Dodanim in 10 verse 4 is spelled with an R in 1 Chronicles 1 verse 7. Okay, from these the coastland people spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans and their nations. Okay, verse 5 is not in 1 Chronicles, so 1 Chronicles continues with verse 6 of chapter 10. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Those are the same. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteka. The sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. Now, Sabta is spelled slightly different as well. Sabta has an H on it in Genesis 10, but does not have an H in 1 Chronicles 1. Okay, Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. That is also in 1 Chronicles 1 verse 10. And then Genesis 10 adds, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, and the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin. Between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. Okay, so verses 9 through 12. Yeah, 9 through 12 are not in 1 Chronicles. So 1 Chronicles continues with, verse 13, Egypt. Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Laabim, Nephtuhim, Pathrusim, Calsalim, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorim. Okay, both of those are the same. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heath. Those are the same. And the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Okay, those are the same. Genesis 10 adds, afterward the clans of the Canaanites dispersed, and the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, and in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their nations, their lands, and their nations. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. And then verse 22 is the sons of Shem, and that goes with 1 Chronicles 1 verse 17. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. And the sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash, and Genesis 10 verse 23. And 1 Chronicles 1, it's Meshach instead of Mash, but they're the same person. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, For in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Almadad, Sheleph, Zarmapheth, Jera, Hadaram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Okay. And then Joktan fathered, this is continued in chapter 10, Joktan fathered Almadad, Sheleph has, okay, those are the ones these are, okay. So we're down to 10 verse 30, sorry. The territory in which they lived extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies and their nations, and from these nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. Okay. So sometimes it can be hard to get very much meaning out of these chapters that are full of genealogy. Excuse me. So I put in Gemini AI, apply Genesis 10 to doctrine, reproof, correction, and instruction in righteousness. It is incredibly common, this is AI's response, it is incredibly common to hit Genesis 10, often called the Table of Nations, and completely glaze over. It's a long list of ancient, hard-to-pronounce names. It is very easy to wonder, how is a genealogy profitable for my life today? But when you run Genesis 10 through the filter of 2 Timothy 3:16, which is where I get the doctrine, reproof, correction, and instruction and righteousness from, a chapter that seems like a dry historical ledger suddenly becomes a profound theological map. Here is how Genesis 10 applies to each of those four categories. Doctrine. What is true? What does this teach us? So you can use that for any chapter. Some chapters are a bit easier to come up with this on your own without asking AI, but just ask, what is this telling me that is true, and what does it teach us about God, humanity, and the world? The unity of humanity. Genesis 10 teaches us that the doctrine that every single human being, regardless of ethnicity, geography, or language, traces their lineage back to a single family, Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. God's sovereignty over history. This chapter shows that the migration of people and the forming of borders isn't random, as the Apostle Paul later preaches in Acts 17, verse 26. And since this is AI, I do like to double check in my actual Bible when it has references. So we're going to go to Acts 17. Verse 26. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. So for this, I went ahead and marked beside Acts 17:26, where it says one man. I underlined one man and put Adam with an arrow pointed to Noah. So Adam was the first one man, and then Noah is the second man from whom all the families of the earth are from. And then I also underlined boundaries of their dwelling place, and above that I just made a short reference, Genesis 10 and 11. Okay. Fulfillment of promise. God commanded Noah in Genesis 9 to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Genesis 10 is the documentary evidence that God's decree was fulfilled. Reproof. Reproof challenges our toxic behaviors and wrong thinking, dismantling racism and ethnocentrism. If Genesis 10 is true, then racial superiority is a theological and biological lie. You cannot hold to a biblical worldview and harbor racial prejudice, because this chapter proves we are all distant cousins. It reproves any mindset that tries to dehumanize another people group. The illusion of human empire. The chapter highlights Nimrod, verses 8 through 10, a mighty hunter who built the first great human empires, including Babel and Nineveh. It serves as a gentle reproof regarding human pride. Empires rise and kings try to make a name for themselves. But ultimately, they are just a few verses in God's much larger story. And we do see in chapter 11 what happens at Babel. And then also Nineveh is familiar because we know that God sent Jonah to preach to Nineveh. Correction. Correction realigns us when we've drifted off course. Correcting Israel-only thinking. It's easy to read the Old Testament and think God only cared about the Jewish people. Genesis 10 corrects this by listing 70 nations before God calls Abraham in Genesis 12. God is setting the stage. He is saying, I am the God of the whole world. When God later promises Abraham that all the families of the earth shall be blessed through him, Genesis 10 is the actual list of those families. Genesis 10 is the ancestors to those families. The blessing actually comes through Jesus, who comes through the line of Abraham. And through Jesus, the entire world is saved. Realigning secular versus sacred history. We often separate Bible stories from world history. Genesis 10 connects them. The descendants listed here became the ancient Greeks, Javan, Egyptians, Mizraim, and Canaanites. It corrects the idea that the Bible is just a book of spiritual allegories. It is rooted in real human history. Instruction and righteousness. How do we live this out? Instruction trains us to live out God's will practically, fueling the Great Commission. Jesus commanded his followers to go and make disciples of all nations. Matthew 28, verses 19. So let me go to Matthew 28. Verse 19. It says, Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So this is just the beginning of where Jesus is telling us to go and save all the nations, not just Israel. Anticipating the end. Instruction in righteousness teaches us to live with the end in mind. Genesis 10 shows the nations scattering. Revelation 7 verse 9 shows the beautiful reversal of this, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages standing before the throne. So I'm actually going to go to Revelation 7. And it's after the listing of the 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. And it says, After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one can number, from every nation, from all tribes and people and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. I actually ended up reading verse 10 with that. So you see where it's getting the Revelation 7 verse 9 from. And our takeaway, Genesis 10 isn't just a list of dead guys. It is God's way of saying, I know exactly who is on this planet. I know exactly where they came from, and I have a plan to redeem them. I love that so much that I wrote it at the top of the page on 1 Chronicles, the very beginning of 1 Chronicles. And one of the reasons I chose 1 Chronicles over Genesis 10 is because there is so much genealogy at 1 Chronicles. There's I think 11 chapters. At least 9 or 10. About 9 chapters maybe. Yeah, at least 9 chapters of basically nothing but names. A lot of just names. We do have a little bit, a genealogy of the returned exiles. Yep. Yeah, these are basically a lot of names. And so, it's easy to want to skip over chapters like First Chronicles. That's what I did when I was like 16. When I first tried reading the Bible through all the way, I got to First Chronicles and I looked at all the names and I'm like, what? And so this is my way of trying to combat that this time as I'm coming back through and trying to read. So that's why I'm comparing it when I come across their genealogy in Genesis. And that's why I put, God is saying, I know exactly who is on this planet. All these people listed in First Chronicles, he knew exactly who they were. He remembered each one. I know exactly where they came from. He lists exactly who their fathers are and who their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers and their ancestors. I have a plan to redeem them. It's for all of us. His plan to redeem humanity through Jesus is for all of us. And it was also for the ones in the Old Testament as well. So that's why I put that in First Chronicles instead of in Genesis. And I just want to repeat that again. I just love that saying so much. God is saying, I know exactly who is on this planet. I know exactly where they came from. And I have a plan to redeem them. That should make us feel loved by God when he is saying that he knows exactly who we are, where we come from, and he has a plan for us. Thank you.